And if you're ready, we will get going, because we've got something a little bit different for you today. Let me tell you, apparently there's an overflow area. It's like a car park, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? An overflow area near the speaker's ready room, which I presume this is being streamed to. So if you are struggling right at the back, at least you can grab a seat in there. My name is Stephen Dixon. I'm a news presenter in the UK. But more importantly, when it comes to all of this, and particularly ATTD, is that I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I have been for 31 years or so now. So I have a particular interest in the technology surrounding type 1 diabetes, and indeed all diabetes, and how we manage it with technology, because I'm old enough to remember the first blood glucose meters that I was using, which needed about half a pint of blood and took about 6 minutes to give you a reading. It was the grim old days, wasn't it? But thankfully things have changed, and things are continuing to change, which is a really, really positive thing. Now, I just want to run you through a couple of the bits that we've got for you today. First and foremost, we've got a lot of interactive voting today. Now, you can do it on the app. Don't forget to download the app if you haven't already, and you can then navigate to this session, and the interactive features are all there. However, what is often quicker is just when we bring up a question, scan the QR code. It should be big enough for you to capture it on your phone, and then you can answer the question there, and then hopefully it takes only about 10 seconds to get the result through. If you are using the app, you can also ask a question on the app, but also on your seats there should be a pen and a bit of paper, so you can ask a question at any point. If you do that, and I know it's all very crowded, please, as soon as you've written it, pass your question to the end of the row near the walls, and then someone from Abbott will come and collect them from you throughout the session, so don't leave it till the end. So we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So send your questions as soon as you've done them to the end of the aisle, and someone will come and pick them up. It should be an interesting session because we're not giving you a talk today. This is a chat show. I'm a TV host, so why not do a chat show? So it should be relaxed, should be interactive. These guys don't know exactly what I'm going to be asking them, so it should hopefully will keep everyone a little bit on their toes. But we are here because we have entered a world of sensor technology, haven't we? And it is really the stuff of dreams for people like me. But as you know, the industry doesn't stand still. So where do we go from sensor technology for type 1 diabetics, which it predominantly is at the moment, to maybe rethinking the treatment limits of sensor technology? Flash and CGM has really benefited type 1s. Can it benefit type 2? Do we have prejudices against it being used in an older community? Do we need to look at sensor technology when it comes to things other than glucose levels? Perhaps we do. And how, crucially, do we embrace technology integration? Because that is a key thing, I mean, certainly for someone like me, that is a key thing moving forward. That integration, which is going to make my life not only easier, but healthier, and bring me a better quality of life in all of that. Now, thankfully, I'm just a patient, right? What do I know? What do I know? We have a team of experts with us today. Professor Samuel Seydoux, Professor Bernhard Kulzer, Professor Jean-Pierre Rivellin, Professor Ramzi Ajan, Dr. Jackie Elliott, Professor Jochen Surfert, and Professor Keaton Dattaria, who will all be joining me for a chat over the next 90 minutes or so. So there's plenty to get through this morning. So as I ask, well, in fact, they're already there, aren't they? Sam and Doug are already here. So let's kick off with a question, should we? If we can bring the first question up as we just have a look at that for you. And the question is then, if you can scan away on your phones, in your clinical practice, what percentage of elderly patients with diabetes is using CGM? Of course, it depends on what you class as elderly in all of that, doesn't it? Which is a key question, I think, in all of this. And clearly, anyone under 75 is my current perspective now that I'm nearly 50. I'm approaching my youth, I think, at 50. Let's see if we can bring the answers through. So there you go. What percentage of your elderly patients is using CGM? 0 to 20%, 52%. So, I mean, that's the overriding result. 7%, 60% plus, 8%, 80% plus 4%. So it's in some respects, you could argue, not surprising, but in some cases, a pretty grim picture. Let's see, should we, what Bernard and Sam make of all of this. Sam, what's your response to this?
Yeah, that's not surprising, actually. When you look at the data, more than about half of the audience think that less than 20% of their populations will be on CGM. Like you said, it depends on what you call an elderly patient. Depending on where in the world you are, the age might vary. Some data suggest that certainly in the UK, about 45.5% of patients over the age of 65 have access to a smartphone. In France, a lot higher, 74%. In America, around 58.8%. In Canada, it's around 62.6%. So in all of these countries, you have more than 50% of patients with access to smartphones. And so really, a number of 20%, in my opinion, seems small because we think that these patients do not have the knowledge to use technology. But actually, the data that is emerging suggests that they actually are just as competent, and if given the chance, they will use it. Technology is just going to get better. We're not going backwards, so we have to encourage this elderly population to focus on the use of CGM for better glycemic control.
What do you think, Bernard? Because some of this does reflect on what we think of as an elderly patient, doesn't it?
I guess age is not a good factor for the indication or contraindication of modern technologies like CGM, because there's so much wide range of people's ability. I think if we are speaking of elderly people, we always think of the biological age, but that's not right. Just think of Joe Biden. He's 80. He's coming from a exhausting journey of Ukraine, and he's thinking about re-election with 80. So he's absolutely fit for CGM. And so I was a member of the guideline group of the German guidelines for diabetes and elderly people, and we always thought that are we able to create some age-related recommendations for people with diabetes? And we failed. It's not possible because it's absolutely depends on the physical and mental health of the circumstances of the comorbidity. So internally, we, in the guideline group, we spoke of 3 different groups, the go-goes, the slow-goes, and the no-goes. And I think go-goes are people who have an active lifestyle, and they can be in an age as Joe Biden or something like that. They have an active lifestyle. They can active manage their diabetes, and CGM may helps them to keep this active lifestyle and so to fulfill their dreams, the life dreams in the last decade of their life.
I know we're going to be talking in our next section about sensor use within type 2 diabetes. However, when we look at the use of CGM and flash technology, we're framing this as people with diabetes. Is there going to be a significant difference between elderly type 1s and elderly type 2s in terms of how they understand the condition? There's the sort of in-depth way in which certainly type 1s have to deal a lot more actively with what they have.
Well, yes and no. No, because it shouldn't really. At the moment, a lot of the focus on CGM use is avoidance of hypoglycemia. And both types of patients do get hypoglycemia. So you could argue that somebody with type 2 on multiple daily injections should be having CGM. However, I always argue that patients with type 2, even though they get hypoglycemia, they spend a lot of their time in hyperglycemia. And that is more of an important issue, especially for me working in primary care. A lot of my patients who are type 2 diabetes patients spend a lot of their time in hyperglycemia, and they need a CGM to be able to assist them modify their behavior for glycemic control. So the focus so much in that population should not be avoiding hyperglycemia. If you do that, then what you're going to do is restrict the use of this wonderful technology for patients who might use it for other reasons, such as behavior change and motivation to take control of their diabetes.
Where are we in terms of sensor use amongst the elderly, in terms of the sort of satisfaction in treatment that they have? I mean, I know we've got a slide here showing just what a difference it makes. I mean, how do you read this, Bernard?
Just one comment to that was Sam was told. So I think there's one difference, because coming back to the guidelines, I think we have two main treatment goals for elderly people. And this is maintaining a good quality of life. And this is overlapping with treatment satisfaction. And the other important therapeutic goals is to avoid hypoglycemia. These are the main therapeutic goals. And this is having a lot of to do with CGM. And just coming to this, the treatment satisfaction, I think treatment satisfaction is a really important thing for people who have some burdens with diabetes, fears of hypoglycemia, and hypoglycemia in the context of people with type 2 diabetes has another impact as for people in younger ages, because hypoglycemias are more risky for people with type 2 diabetes, and they say, I have a perceived frequency of hypoglycemia. That's a good thing. And also they say that the treatment is more convenient. For not elderly people would say, no, convenience is not so important. The health insurance wouldn't pay for convenience, they pay for evidence. But convenience in the sense for elderly people means easy to use. It's easy to use, it's user-friendly, I can do it even if I have some handicaps. So I think this is very important. Treatment satisfaction is one part of quality of life for elderly people.
What strikes me on this, satisfaction with the understanding of diabetes. And what do you make of that, Sam? Because there is an argument to say, and some people make the argument, I guess you could say it's a prejudice in many respects, but to say, well, elderly people sometimes struggle to understand the treatment decisions that they should be making. They don't know how to make the right treatment decisions. If their understanding of diabetes is improved through sensor technology, then that's just got to be a win-win, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, that's the point I was trying to make, because a lot of the data that you see on the data is actually very straightforward, very color-coded, and they can see and understand red, gold, green time in range, red in the time below range, and amber time above range. Traffic light system, we all used to it. The elderly people are used to it, so it's easy for them to understand the data. It's not complex. So the assumption that elderly people do not know technology, you will be denying them. If you didn't. And this type 2 data, straight off the press, it's an e-poster here at the conference.
When the mean manifestation age of type 2 diabetes in Germany is 64. When they will get the insulin therapy, it's 8 to 10 years plus, so they are 70 plus. And we know from some data of Germany that elderly people don't have the chance to get into education. So we have less diabetes education for elderly people. So don't be astonished about this result.
Okay, what about the big stumbling block, which is the patients themselves? Now, even I've fallen into this trap when I was younger, and when the technology was just coming to the fore, a lot of the changes that were happening now, and you read about it, you hear about it, and you think, oh, I like what I like. I know what I know. I had this when I moved over to a pump from MDI. I thought, well, I like my injections, I don't want to change. So how do you then convince an elderly patient who may have been doing this for a lot longer than even I have, that actually change is going to benefit them?
I think it's an assumption, you're right. But if you show them, what you have, usually, I mean, 40 years ago, we used to be testing sugars with urine, and that's changed. I'm sure people will say, well, I'll be reluctant to be pricking my finger because that's more invasive. You fast forward, most people will not, a lot of people, everybody will not, do their urine testing for monitoring. They will do fingerprinting. And we've moved on now. This is not fingerprint, it's less invasive. So if you start from that discussion about the fact that it's less invasive and show them how easy it is to use, you will be surprised. I mean, just moving away from diabetes, there's some data emerging from Canada as well. Cross-sectional study in over 4,000 patients, just looking at their attraction to technology, medical technology. In that data, about over 600 patients were in the elderly population, and there was no difference. Both groups of patients, accepted technology very well. So it's just an assumption that we have. And yes, we are slightly less likely to have elderly people accepting technology compared to younger, but in most countries, about 50%.
Okay.
I fully agree, but I would just add the word safety. I think to feel safe, because hypoglycemia in the context of elderly people has another impact as for younger people. It's more risky. Frailty, falling is really a risk for elderly people, and they have a mostly impaired hypoglycemia awareness. So the consequences of hypoglycemia are more worse than for younger people. And there are some studies that if you have a higher glucose variability, you have a higher risk for hypoglycemia. So I think safety, avoidance of hypoglycemia, warning functions against hypoglycemia is the most important topic for people with type 2 diabetes using an insulin therapy.
In that age, they're more likely to have, cognitive impairment, multimorbidity, on polypharmacy, a lot of drugs that will interact with each other, increase the risk of hypoglycemia, renal impairment as well. So there's a lot of reasons why the elderly population will be more at risk of hypoglycemia, and continuous glucose monitoring will pick up the moment-to-moment variations in the glycemia and reduce the hypoglycemia.
Do you think practitioners have a real prejudice is a very strong word, but almost an innate prejudice when it comes to the elderly to say we're not even going to consider this as an option?
I think your first question was the definition of elderly. I think we have to separate elderly from older patients. Some literature will say older patients with diabetes. The word older is more of a comparative adjective. Okay, somebody is 65 and another person is 66. The 66 years old person is older. If they are functionally independent, no comorbidities, you could be accused of discriminating against them if you're relaxing their targets. But if the person is 64 with a lot of comorbidities and severe frailty, you'll be justified to call them elderly. That's a different thing. So when you talk about elderly population and you treat them differently, relax their targets, choose more friendly medications that will not cause a lot of hypoglycemia, you could be justified.
What about when we actually sort of look at an elderly and infirm population and those people who are in nursing homes, residential care? How does this fit into them? Because obviously they're not, in a lot of cases, not managing their own diabetes under those circumstances. Does CGM work in that scenario? Because it's not only about them, it's not self-management necessarily, is it? It's about having the staff in that facility being able to manage that CGM.
I guess the two functions of the CGM are important. The warning function for hypoglycemia, and you see the risk of hypoglycemia for your patients. You can see the CGM values for telemonitoring or for monitoring the diabetes. And the second one is the following function. The following function is very important for elderly people who are not able to manage their diabetes themselves. So some friends, nursing systems, or yes, the diabetes system can assist them if they have attempt to the glucose values. So I think telemonitoring combined maybe in the future with AAL, so ambient assisted living systems, so technology will help people to stay in their house maybe, or not to go into an old people house. So that's really important for many people to stay at home and get some help for the managing of the diabetes. And this can be an external help with telemonitoring or something like that, nursings. Yeah.
Okay, Sam, what would be your key message out of all of this, your sort of take-home message for people here today?
My key take-home message will be that we should not underestimate the elderly population about their interest in technology. They may be less likely to take it up compared to younger patients, but they are, very much likely to benefit from it. And hypoglycemia is very rife in that population, and monitoring the day-to-day or minute-by-minute glycemic variability with continuous glucose monitoring is appropriate in that population.
I would say don't stigmatize elderly people and think that they are not able to handle it. It's a technology which helps elderly people, especially elderly people, for getting to have more security and to be safe for hypoglycemia and to help them to remain quality of life. And these are the really two main therapeutic goals for elderly people. So I think CGM is a very powerful tool for the therapy of elderly people, especially for elderly people with an insulin therapy.
So as a banner headline, we'd say what sort of technology available to all?
Absolutely.
Okay, lovely. Oh, you agree? Well, that's always nice. Professor Sidhu, Professor Kulza, thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to be talking about, I mentioned in the introduction, didn't I, as we do a little swap over of guests. Come on, grab a seat in the hot sofa, as we're calling it this morning. Do we need to change our view of quite what we use sensor technology for? Because it is predominantly at the moment for type 1 diabetes. Does that need to change? Joining us now, Professor Jean-Pierre Riveline and Professor Ramzi Ajag. Good to see you both this morning. We'll kick off with a question, should we? So you can obviously take part in this. Scan away on your phone. CGM in type 2 diabetes should be limited to individuals with basal bolus therapy or insulin pumps. Should there be that limit put on the people who get access to sensor-based technology in type 2 diabetes? And it's going to be interesting because, I guess a lot of you are people who are deciding on who gets what, actually, in your various countries. Let's see what the results are. There you go. Well, 71% of you do not agree with those limitations. 22%, as that figure is shifting, 23% do. Ramzi, what do you make of that result?
So for the 70%, I love you all. For the 23%, I understand why they have concerns. So I think we need to think strategically here, because we know that it is beneficial in people on multiple daily injections in type 2. When we expand it, we do have evidence that it's beneficial in other groups as well. But I do understand the concerns because people will be concerned about cost. However, we need to be very careful about the issues of cost, because you may increase payment a little bit for a year or two, but if you're saving in 5-10 years, that is something that is worth doing. So I am actually with the 70% at this stage.
Okay. why do you think, Jean-Pierre, when we look at some of the evidence, a monitoring device, a sensor, CGM, flash technology, does seem to lead, doesn't it, to a better outcome, even when some medications and regimes themselves aren't changing?
Yes, it's a very interesting point. Is that despite the fact that the treatment doesn't change, we observe sometimes a huge improvement of metabolic control. It's because I previously said that CGM is able to make the patient to modify their lifestyle a bit, especially diet habit, and to have better behavior according postprandial glucose excursions. And so this tool not only lead to modification in insulin doses, but also lead to modification behaviors.
What do you make of this, Ramsey?
Well, if I just may add to Jean-Pierre, it makes the people engaged as well in their treatment, which I think is very important, because we all suffer from that. Sometimes it's difficult in chronic conditions to engage people. In terms of this particular study, it just shows you that even people who are not on intensive insulin treatment can benefit in terms of reduction in HbA1c, improvement in glycemia. And as it was pointed out, there is evidence that in a significant proportion of people don't get a difference in treatment. It's a difference in lifestyle and things that people notice that, my God, I ate that big muffin. Maybe I shouldn't eat the whole muffin next time. I eat half of it, and then I don't get that peak.
Is that simply information is power?
Precisely. Now, you've got to be careful, though, Stephen. You don't want to overwhelm the patient with information. And this is where individualized care comes in. So you need to give enough information for that particular individual to be able to digest. But I think we massively underestimate how much information can people take in, at least in my experience.
Would you agree with that, Jean-Pierre? Because it all seems, I mean, I have to say, to me, when I started off on it all, it seems like an awful lot of information. It's surprising how quickly you adapt to that, how natural it becomes, and how self-informed you feel as a result.
I think that it's possible at the condition if CGM initiation is accompanied with education of patient in order to lead to huge improvement. With education about behaviors, for example, you can have such improvement.
Okay, let's have a look at the next slide, because I know, Jean-Pierre, this is actually from a study that you did.
Yeah, with other person in my team. We have the opportunity to evaluate an exhaustive medico-administrative database that contains information about healthcare consumption and hospitalization of all patients here who initiate Freestyle Libre. It was in 2017. And we compared acute diabetes 7 leading hospitalization with 1 year after Freestyle Libre initiation in comparison with the previous year without Freestyle Libre. And we observe a very important reduction in hospitalization for diabetes after Freestyle Libre initiation, more than 50%, as you see, 1 year after Freestyle Libre initiation, and even 2 years after. And it was leading by a decrease of ketoacidosis epidosis in all population who initiate Freestyle Libre in France.
This then presumably sort of falls straight into that cost-benefit analysis that you mentioned at the beginning.
No, absolutely, and I need to congratulate my friend, mon ami here, for this fantastic data, because it shows you that there is not only glycemia you're improving hard outcomes. And that, of course, I mean, if you can prevent hospitalization, that's a major cost reduction. And I think we need to be very careful when we do the cost effectiveness analysis when it comes to these devices, because sometimes with the tools that we have, we do a very limited cost effectiveness analysis. Sometimes it's quite short. So these things, the more data we have like that, the more we'll be able to do appropriate cost effectiveness to show that these devices actually are saving money.
There's a problem here, isn't there? I know this gets ever so slightly political, so do forgive me. I know it's different in each and every country. But clinicians are working, they're not able to take that long-term cost-effective analysis, are they? They're looking at individual budget pressures for their hospitals or trusts or however it works in their country. So can clinicians actually use this data and say, I can prescribe, I can give people this sort of technology based on this information, even when there are other pressures surrounding them?
I think not only, because you can notice that the absolute percentage is quite low in this type 2 population. However, it could be very severe in some fragile subpopulation, but it's not enough to say it's cost effective. We also have to consider improvement of HbA1c and prevention of long-term complications. It's a very important point. And also, we didn't spoke yet in this point, the improvement of quality of life, satisfaction, and generally EPROM.
Well, I know you raised concerns. We were talking last night. You raised some concerns, Ramsey, about clinical inertia when it comes to some treatments.
No, absolutely. I mean, we know that we delay intensification of treatment in type 2. That is well known. And I think once the physician as well as the patient can see that actually that those glucose levels are really high during the day, that will help to start that treatment, that additional treatment earlier. Not only that, it will help to start treatment in a safe way, because quite often we don't like to start insulin or any other preparation because we are worried about the side effects, hypos. But if you have loads of data about glycemia, that healthcare professional will be far more comfortable to start a new therapy, and the patient will be more comfortable. And I would like to touch on something that Jean-Pierre said is the patient-related outcomes. We should not ignore that, because if the patient is feeling better and you're improving glycemia and you're reducing long-term complications and you're reducing hospital admissions, what else do I want as a physician? So I think there are multiple things that we need to take into consideration when we have new technologies, devices, or treatments for that matter.
Okay, here's a question from someone who's not a medical expert then, right? Just little old me. Oh, forgive me. Why is it, Jean-Pierre, that when it's explained, like you've both explained it, it seems a no-brainer? It seems a no-brainer. You are going to get better clinical outcomes for the vast majority of patients. So why then isn't it happening now?
You ask if it's not reimbursed now.
Yeah, why is this not happening now? Why do people need to be persuaded to do this?
I think it's not available because we need to add some evidence, randomized trials, data, to convince authorities to reimburse systems. I think this is the main reason. You see in this room, the majority of the person are convinced that CGM could be available for this population. But I think we need to add some evidence-based medicine to convince authority to reimburse it.
Mm. And I mean, is there enough evidence out there at the moment? We're seeing these studies, but I mean, is it going to take a lot more work?
So when you talk about the type 2 population, it's a very diverse, it's a heterogeneous population. It's not sort of one size fits all. So you've got different subgroups. So if you take people on multiple daily injections or insulin pump, which is a minority, as you quite rightly said, it's a no-brainer. It's similar to type 1, as far as I'm concerned. And actually not giving the type 2 on that treatment, who is coping with that therapy, continuous glucose monitoring would be discrimination, because you've got to treat them exactly the same. And then you've got the other groups. And this is where things get a little bit more difficult, because there are cost implications that we can't ignore. You know, I would love to give that kind of technology to all my diabetes patients, but there are cost implications. And this is where you need to be careful and you need to prioritize your patients according to the data that we already have. We have loads of data, but of course we need more. But we have some subgroups where we can justify the use of that technology beyond the ones who are on multiple daily injections.
Okay, look, here's a quick one for you. Very nearly a quarter of you said that there should be the limits in place in that first question. Some of you want to put your hand up? I'm not going to ask you a question, don't worry. I just want to see if you're out there who voted no, you think the limits should have been in place on that question. Anyone brave enough to admit it? No? Oh, that's interesting. No one wants to admit it.
No, our arguments have been strong, I think, Stephen.
Well, yeah, because I just wanted to see who had changed their mind. If you voted in that 23% and you have changed your mind, or at least are reconsidering, do you want to put your hand up? No. Oh, there's one. Hello. There's one brave lady here. Well done, you. So you're convincing some people, well, a lot of people, it would seem, as a result of all of this. You mentioned HbA1c issues, Jean-Pierre, earlier. Why does it, in type 2, especially in newly diagnosed type 2, why does it take so long to assess HbA1c? I might be lost slightly in translation. Ramsey, go.
So the issue with HbA1c...
to assess response, I should say.
So the issue with HbA1c, it reflects your average control over roughly a period of 3 months. So most, at least the systems in the UK, you start a new treatment and you've got 4 to 6 months before you reassess the patient when you're doing an HbA1c. Now, if you ask me, six months is a very long time, and sometimes it extends to even longer. And then you think, ooh, this treatment didn't work. Let's try something else or increase the dose or whatever. So you can go on for years titrating something up. Whereas here, you get an instantaneous response. And actually, quite often, the patient tells you that, oh, this worked, I'm really happy. And don't forget that the patient will make some changes to their lifestyle, which helps as well. So you get that additive effect and you improve that glycemia very quickly.
Yeah, in terms of those behavioural changes, because I think it's a really important point, Jean-Pierre, why is that happening, do you think? Is it just the sense that having so much information, but easily digested information about what is happening with glucose levels, is that just empowering for a patient who may otherwise feel a little bit lost?
Yes, I think it's quite easy for the patient to reveal him what are the consequences of a meals of eating behavior. And I think it's, like a response of his behavior more than a self-monitoring blood glucose, which is much less easier to do. With this CGM, it's very easy to use, and he sees very easy the consequences of each meal, and he see what's happened in terms of hyperglycemia, a spike of hyperglycemia, and he can change his way of eating, especially if an education was proposed him previously.
You see, I think it's remarkable, isn't it? Because when you see that real-time information, it is actually a game changer for a lot of people. Just the clear understanding, the clear correlation between behavior and what is happening within their own bodies.
Well, I can tell you, I tried, I don't have diabetes, but I tried SMBG for 2 weeks, 4 times a day. I found it a struggle. The information I got was very limited. It was interesting, but limited. And I tried the sensor, and that was very interesting because what the exercise did to me after meals and what sort of that orange juice does to you and so on. And I found it very, very helpful, despite the fact I don't have diabetes. So for somebody for diabetes, it gives you a whole amount of information and it makes you feel safe. There is no question about it.
It's really interesting. Do you think everyone who's a clinician should wear a sensor at some point?
May I add, it makes it easier to tell the patient to wear the sensor as well. The ones who are there's a minority always are skeptical, they don't want to change. And you say, well, actually, I did wear it and I tried the other one. Just give it a try and see what you think.
It's like, can I just say, we have a lot of nutritionists and things come on the show who always tell me that porridge has a very low glycemic index. And I eat my porridge with no sugar, no sweetener, a little bit of salt, milk, water, salt, porridge oats. And my bloods go through the roof in about 10 minutes. And no one believes me. When you talk to an expert, a nutritionist, nobody believes me. I can say, well, it's true, because I can actually see it within minutes. It's one of those, I'd never understand why people think porridge is low glycemic index. It isn't for me.
I believe you. I have some people, not everybody is like that, but yeah, some people are like that.
Yeah. It's great for a hypo porridge. Who would have known? Who would have known? Your key points from this. What would your key takeaway from this want to be, Jean-Pierre?
The fact that CGM, it's an educational tool, not only to help the patient to adapt insulin doses, but help him to change his behavior. I want to add a point that CGM is particularly indicated in patients with high risk of hypoglycemia, especially since the alarms. For example, kidney failure or a patient with sulfonylurea treatment, this point must be underlined because it's very important.
Ramsey?
Well, I feel that we need to expand, but be reasonable in our expansion. So, for instance, you want to escalate therapy is very helpful, intermittent use, for instance. People following an acute event, because we've got the data following myocardial infarction, for instance, you want quick improvement in glycemia. We have the data for that, should be used. People on basal insulin, we do have the data again. It should be used, but within reason, and always remember the cost implications. But there are subgroups of people where you can definitely use it. And don't forget people who find testing difficult, people with Parkinson's, rheumatoid arthritis, mental health difficulties. So there are subgroups who would definitely benefit, and I would encourage people to think about that.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can either enter them through the app or jot them down on your bits of paper and pass them to the sides of your aisles, and they will be picked up by people from Abbott, and then we'll get to them towards the end. Let's talk now about integration, should we? I love this, because this is something I can, as a patient, I can sort of fully understand and get behind and get excited about. And I'm very, very pleased that Dr. Jackie Elliott and Professor Jochen Suffert are both here to talk about integration in different ways, actually, in your experiences. So let's start with a question, should we? And it's an interesting one. When did you last forget something? Today, yesterday, last week, last month, never? Do we have any elephants in the room? I don't think so. Let's see how bad all our memories are. Today, nearly half of us. There you go, nearly forgot something today. I forget. I get halfway down the stairs and forget if I'm going up or down. That's me. But this is where, Jackie, integration becomes really important, doesn't it, in terms of just keeping ourselves informed as to what we've done. How does this work with insulin pens? I know smart insulin pens that you've really been involved with.
Yeah, so the smart insulin pens have been introducing now for over a year in our clinic, and it just makes a lot of sense to people using pens. So I show them the pen and the fact that it's got a memory function on, and they can double check if they did give their insulin with their breakfast or if they forgot, and they just go, "That's so simple. Why didn't they do it before?" kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about, there's also the timing option of how long since they last gave it. So it really helps in terms of, do I need to decrease my dose? Have I still got some insulin on board? Just universally, patients gone, that makes so much sense.
I mean, look, there may well be people, though, who think, well, how can you forget if you've had an injection? It's easily done, isn't it? To be fair, it is easily done.
Well, I think, that was the point of the first slide, that you don't need to think about the people that you look after having memory problems, because we all forget something. There's 4% of people out there that never forget anything, so well done to you. But the vast majority of us do forget something. And so, I've had people say, well, I wish I'd had that last week because I double-dosed my background insulin. And, spent the next 2 or 3 days forever treating hypos. Or, I sometimes wonder, did I misjudge the amount of carb, or did I just, not inject at all? And you just can't remember if they've injected or not.
No, but from a clinical perspective then, from people that you are dealing with every day, because it's not just about whether someone has injected or not, whether you remember to do it or not. It's about treatment regimes, isn't it? It's about looking at their results. As there's one here, so someone's track for, I can't see if it's a day or what it is there, but it's what they've actually done during that time, which then is going to inform what you're suggesting clinically.
So the trace is from a young lady that I'd not seen for some time, but the time I saw before, I gave her some smart pens because I said the integration is coming. So we knew that it was going to be announced. I went, just go away, use this pen, and it might help you remember your doses a bit better. Anyway, so we talked through this trace, and she said, well, in the middle of the afternoon, she's a young person, got up late, her lunch, she just said, I was given loads of insulin and my glucose just wasn't coming down. And then if you look at the right-hand side, you're probably thinking, well, I wonder if she injected at all before that meal before bed, or did she just inject late? And you just don't know. So then what we did was actually pair the pen with the phone, which is very simple. You don't need anything extra. You've just got the pen, you've got the LibraLink app. And so the next panel shows you what I actually saw then in terms of injections. So if we could just have that's it, that's great. So she was telling me that she was injecting loads and loads at lunchtime. I looked at the top trace and thought, no, she's not. And indeed, you can see at the end of the day that she did inject late, but she did inject. So that gives us a better idea of what's actually happening. We've got 2 different colors. So the background insulin is a darker color underneath. And so then we got into the discussion, why were you injecting so much after lunch? And she said, well, I told you my glucose wasn't coming down.
Yeah.
And we ended up then, discussing lipohypertrophy. So she was just injecting into a fatty lump.
Right.
And I'm not sure that I would have immediately thought that from the top trace. So it immediately changes your consultation and gets you nearer to the truth.
I think there's a lot of us who stack insulin, isn't there? I mean, I've been guilty of it myself, but I'm probably doing it as we speak because I've been on a complete yo-yo over the past 3 or 4 days. And we do stack, and you can understand why patients are doing it, but unless your clinician is understanding what you're doing, you're unable to help us.
That's right. So in terms of stacking, we obviously know that it can lead to hypoglycemia. It didn't in this case. It was a discussion about fatty lumps. But if you just pick a time where somebody's had a hypo and you can actually see the injections, then I think the real beauty of this system is that seeing is believing. So although I've talked to patients about stacking over the years, probably many times, when you can find an actual example of that injection plus that injection led to that hypo, immediately just falls into place for them. So they make connections that they weren't able to make before.
So with that information, as we've got in the B trace there, how would that have then informed your discussion moving forward?
So we got into a discussion about rotating sites and the importance of that, but also in terms of her carb ratios and carb counting and how it would be useful to go back to basics. We had a discussion about it was that long-acting insulin. And in fact, because I could see the doses of the long-acting insulin, she was varying that quite a bit from day to day. So we then got into a discussion of that because I'd asked her what dose she takes, and she told me the dose that she took last night. But in fact, she had varied it a lot during the previous week. So it just gives you so much more information at hand, a bit like we've had with pumps, insulin pumps over many years. So We've been able to tweak the settings in the insulin pump because we've known the actual bolus doses, we've known the basal rates, and now with a very simple technology, we're able to level the playing field for the people that are still on pens, which is the majority of people at the moment and will be for the next few years, won't it? So we've got to help people that are still on pen therapy get the very best out of that. And I say, just linking these two together, it's so simple, but it's beautiful in its simplicity.
And so what did this lead to in terms of patient outcomes for this patient?
So we've gone back to carb counting from the beginning. We've talked about rotating sites. We've talked about just keeping to the same dose of background insulin, and then also a much earlier review than we would have done otherwise. The second trace is a little bit different in that this is somebody that was diagnosed with a bad DKA, so he was not known to have diabetes, ended up in critical care for 48 hours, and I saw him at 4 weeks, so this is a tracing from 4 weeks later. And he's been started on basal bolus therapy, he was started on a Libra, and we gave him the connected pens and just said, you just start using them, we'll talk about the pens in detail later on. So this is the first time I've seen him in an outpatient clinic, and you can see he's had a hypo. So we discussed the hypo and what treatment he'd used for that. But then we went into, well, why do you think you went hypo? And he said, well, I was a bit late giving that dose with my tea. As you can see, the pen is on, the syringe is on the top of that spike. And then he said, and then I went for a walk because I was going to the Sheffield United match where football started, apparently. But he walked 2 miles. And he went, so when I walk, does that change how my insulin works? Right. And you just think, blimey, you know, he's 4 weeks out from a unrecordable bicarb and he's making these connections himself. And of course, that kind of experiential learning, reflecting back on what happened to him, is much more powerful. And I said, well, what do you think you could do differently next time? And he said, take less insulin. And then, you know, obviously we advise how much less, but he's got the idea himself. He said, I need to take less insulin.
4 weeks in.
4 weeks in, when he walks to a Sheffield United match.
Yeah. See, that's really impressive, isn't it? Because as you say, it's that experiential learning which far surpasses anything we're ever told if you work it out for yourself. But again, it boils down to what we were saying in the last segment. Knowledge is power in all of this.
Yeah, and knowledge that you find for yourself sticks much more, doesn't it, than, you know, sitting in a lecture theatre or being told this is what you should do. If you can actually work it out for yourself, it's much more meaningful.
Really interesting. Well, let's get your thoughts on this, should we? I think we've got a question. Have we? There you go. What percentage of people with diabetes on insulin pen therapy do you think would gain benefit from a smart connected pen? After what Jackie's just said. And I guess part of that ties in with how is it going to benefit clinicians to advise them better, isn't it? Because it is all about that information to clinicians. So what do you think? Let's see if we've got the results coming through. 54% or so in that 80 to 100% mark. Still a few stragglers towards the end. I mean, what do you make, Jackie, of the sort of up to 60% mark there? So you got 14 to 24, 26%, a quarter of people not convinced, it would seem.
Well, I would ask you just to go away and try it, because in the same way as, you know, me suggesting this might be a good thing, I think you need to test it for yourself with your patients. There's some people in my team said, oh, we've got a lot of people on disposable pens and they like their disposable pens. But I've had 2 people in the last year that have been a bit reserved about switching. So if they're on 2 pens, they've stuck with one of their disposable pens but switched the other pen. But everybody else has switched. So I think sometimes we've ended up people on disposable pens for the wrong reasons. And actually, when we explain the advantages of this, people have gone, okay, I'll give it a go. If I hate it, can I go back to my other pens? I went, yeah, that's fine. but we don't see people switching back. So I would just urge you to try it.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Give it a whirl. As someone, when I was going onto a pump, my DSN at the time said, well, it's just because I was very nervous. And they said, well, it's just insulin. This is just insulin with a battery. And if you don't like it, go back. And I think that's the key, isn't it? To be told if you're not happy, you can change back.
Yeah, it's about giving people with diabetes a choice, isn't it? And trying to broaden that choice and just to say, here's a device that is actually, I'm thinking, really low cost, low tech, easy to teach, and just try it. Just see if you like it.
Yeah, fair point. Well, look, let's move from pens to pumps, should we? And AID. So here's a question for you. Get your phones at the ready. How much experience do you have with automated insulin delivery? This will be interesting to see, actually, how many of you in the room are actually dealing with this right now. And let's see what the results are on this one. Oh, there you go. Oh, it's...
Very technical audience, I guess.
Well,
which is kind of expected, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, I guess it is. But I'm a little surprised as someone who has yet to come across a clinician in my area who's dealing with this, and I'm desperate to get on some AID. But there you go. I think that's very interesting. Joachim, what do you make of that then?
Yeah, well, I think we have an audience here who can teach us about AID systems with their own experience. It's all about the systems connecting hardware to software right now, existing hardware to software, CGM with pumps and a smart algorithm that connects this and brings up an automated insulin delivery system.
Do we need to be, in a sense, a little bit clearer about AID? I mean, described beautifully as you did, but it's changing, isn't it? And what we're looking at now actually is new AID.
It's a novel AID that connects the Freestyle Libre 3 with the MyLife Ipso pump through a self-learning KI-based or artificial intelligence-based algorithm that connects both hardware parts of it to a system that delivers insulin automatically to a certain extent to patients. And I think it's the novelty here is that's the first thing, a first system that connects the Freestyle Libre 3, which is established CGM, with a pump that is also established and licensed. And I think that's the beauty here. People who already, or patients who are already on Freestyle Libre 3, for example, can go on that. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Okay, let's have a look. I know you've got a case study here.
So here,
I'm interested to see the real-time results.
Here I have a patient case which I received from Dr. Girls, who is sitting here also in the audience, who's also very experienced with these systems. It's a 24-year-old patient with type 2 diabetes since 21 years, not since he was 21 years old, and had an insulin pump without sensor since 2014, the Freestyle Libre 3 since 2021. He was a little bit overweight, wanted to reduce weight, did a lot of sports, reduced weight very impressively. His HbA1c between 7 to 8.5, but high glucose variability and many hypos, which was extended through the sports, or exaggerated through his sports activities. And you see here the AGP report and the traces before he was put on that system, and the time in range was on the bar 58%, which is not at all in the range where we want to have it. And what I was afraid of, or what you can see here, you have a lot of hypos here due to high variability, which you can see on the trace here. And I think the major goal, primary goal here should be to reduce the hypos in these patients, not primary goal to increase the time in range at this point, which would be maybe the secondary approach. And then the patient was put on the system, which is the Freestyle Libre 3, which he already had, and the MyLife Ipso pump connected through the CAM APS FX algorithm. And then if we look at the fresh data after he was put on that, and you see here an example day on the right upper corner here, and what you immediately can spot is that the night is relieving for the patient. So when no carbohydrates come into the system, and the system works at night, so the patient goes into the night with the same blood glucoses or comes out from the night with the same blood glucose as he goes into the night. And what you also can see that it's not perfect yet at this point, but you also can see if we click further, maybe a little bit, you can see that the time in range, or maybe our primary goal, 0% in very low range with the system, and the time in range in parallel increased to 73%, and he had some during the afternoons. He still has some higher glucoses, and we can work on those from then with the patient. And I think that's the beauty with the system, that very quickly the hypos go away at night and make the patient safer.
Can I ask, how important is it, and again I'm asking this from a slightly personal point of view, how important is it, what impact does it have if someone is resetting every night and waking up every morning on a level basis?
Yeah, I think I think that's the major response, or the first response the patients give to us. So that then because the Freestyle Libre, the beauty of the Freestyle Libre or the CGMs is that they have alarms, right? But if the alarms come at night very frequently, then it's annoying, can be annoying, and can be it's sometimes the major thing here. And I think that's the important first advantage these systems can provide.
How much is being done by the algorithm here? I mean, are we still having to look at boluses and work all that out? Is that causing some of the problems? How much of it is actually automated?
I think it's automated to a very, very high extent as compared to to sensor-supported insulin pump therapy, for example. And again, if you look at the trace at night, that's the algorithm, right? So nobody is interfering with exogenous insulin boluses during the night, and the patient is also not eating at night, sleeping. So here you can see what the algorithm can do. And the other thing, and the next thing is the basal, so-called basal rate is completely done by the algorithm. Even if you do have a smaller snack or something like that, and the glucose ramps up, then the algorithm works against that. But of course, you do have to bolus with a system, but the easy or the simplicity of the system is that you can do carb count, but it's not 100% necessary, because you are used to carb count, right?
Yeah. So, but if it's not absolutely necessary, what information are you putting into the system then?
What you put in, I mean, the system offers you a bolus calculator or working without the bolus calculator, and then what you can put in there is you have the options of a small meal, of a normal size meal, large size meal, or very large size meal, which is surprising to me because I was educated as a diabetologist to carb count, to teach patients carb count, and I'm surprised that the algorithm only with this information works. And this is this I think is a very important thing for the patients to simplify, facilitate their insulin therapy.
What does this mean in terms of quality of life for a patient? Because things like carb counting, we get on with it. We just do it, don't we? And you almost forget you're thinking about it. But I can imagine removing that from my brain would be quite a relief, actually.
Yeah. I think, frankly, if you're honest, you removed it from your mind already from time to time before. Most of the patients do that. They just do not really carb count anymore, but they bolus based on their gut feeling, I'd say. And so I think this is, but then the glucoses are not perfect then, of course. Yeah. And I think that this system offers a lot of quality of life with this.
Oh, I think that's really
or improved quality of life.
I think. So, what have patients that you've been dealing with? What have their responses been to you?
I think the night argument is the first thing that most of the time really strikes there. Then things like I can do sports much more safer in many instances. Oh, I've got this invitation tonight for dinner. In the afternoon, my glucose was not perfect. I'm not quite sure whether I should go or something like that. These kind of things in quality of life connections.
Okay, so and what would you say to patients? I mean, particularly, I guess, experienced diabetics. If you're giving it to me,
yeah.
What would your advice to me be?
I think the first advice for you as an experienced pump user would be let the system go. That's the problem, or not the problem. That's it's an important information. The system is a self-learning system, so if you interfere all the time with the system, it also learns your interference, but it's maybe not always wished.
So you've got to trust it.
Yeah, which is hard for some patients, though. So they of course, I mean, we taught them years and years to positively interfere with their insulin delivery, and with this system, they are taught now to let it go.
It's really interesting. Really interesting. I'm so desperate to get on it and give it a try now, I have to tell you. Here's a question for you. I think we've got another question. So after listening to what we've heard, what percentage of people with diabetes on pump therapy do you think would gain benefit from AID? I mean, in some respects, would it be suitable for everybody? I don't know, but if someone is on a pump, then they're clearly sort of across what's going on with them a lot more. So is it going to be a benefit to everyone? Look at that. What's that? 66% is in the 80-100% mark, 24%. So the vast majority thinking it would be a benefit, which is encouraging.
Sure, of course. I think that's the future. And more systems will come, and we will have to learn how to differentially treat patients with the different systems. And I'm sure also that different systems are beneficial for the variability of our patients, but I think that's the future.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Jackie, I know obviously it's interesting because it's two separate issues which are so interlinked in many ways. How would you describe the key point from the pen technology? What would you like people to go home with today from that?
I think just helping people see and make sense of the Libre data. So the Libre is so simple, the pens are simple. You can quickly see if somebody's missed a dose. They can think about the timing of their injection. If they want smaller postprandial peaks, they can experiment with the timing, and then they get to see the results. So it's simple, it's accessible. I think it should be a routine offer to patients to let them choose if they want this simple technology.
Okay. And Joachim, what would your key point be?
I think the algorithm, a very smart algorithm, connects here very established hardware, which is an established and very accurate CTM, together with a solid pump system. And these three parts of it bring simplicity to the life of people with insulin pump therapy, and ease of use and easy start. Just type in your body weight and your 24-hour insulin need, and off you go.
God, it's amazing. I think it's properly amazing. I'm sure some of you got questions on that. Get them on the app or written down and pass to the end, and we'll come to those very shortly. But for now, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
I have to say that really whets my appetite for, for a bit of AID. Fingers crossed that'll come for me before too long. Right, thankfully, one or two questions coming through. So let's see what we've got. Jochen, this one's for you. Where's Jochen? Oh, there you are. Jochen, what's the biggest benefit for someone going on an AID system? Better control, better glucose and waking up, less mental burden? What would you say?
I think it's hard to tell from it depends on the patient. Biggest benefit, I think we should not neglect the improvement of quality of life, which we discussed already. And with that, most of the time also an improvement in glycemic control, of course, comes with it. And one patient, improvement of glycemic control is the major goal. For the other patient, improvement of quality of life, both goes together.
Okay. Sam, where's Sam? There you go, Sam. How do you encourage clinicians to consider CGM for elderly patients? Do clinicians understand how easy Freestyle Libre is?
We're getting there. Most clinicians, certainly in primary care, are not very familiar with this technology yet. But it's improving. With education and automation in clinical systems, it's going to get better.
Okay. One for you, Jackie. Ease of use, this person says, is very important for non-tech people. What makes the Libre and the pen integration so easy?
So most people already have a Libre. Most people are used to a pen. There's no extra bits that you need. So nobody needs to carry around anything extra. They just carry the pen. They have the app on their phone, and then all the data from the pen, the last 800 doses, gets transmitted to the app straight away, and then it goes to the cloud. So, of course, it also helps remote monitoring as well and adjusting doses remotely. So, yeah, no extra bit of kit.
Okay. Jean-Pierre, here we go, one for you. 90% of diabetes is type 2. All the data that we've seen requires interpretation. How do we increase the capability of primary care to get the most out of CGM?
It's difficult to say because now all the data concern patients treated with insulin. But I think we have to educate population, GP, to use sensor, because I'm convinced that in the avenir next year, I think that CGM will progressively replace SMBG in the majority of patients with diabetes. So we have to educate GP to use it, because it's quite easy to use it.
Okay, and here's what I'll put this to you, Ramsey.
May I add that? I think also it's our task to integrate this as cases in which you use this in primary care into guidelines, for example, and give advice or recommendation in which case you use the CGM in a certain way, right?
Ramsey, one for you. We assume that those not on insulin, or we're assuming that those not on insulin will interact with the CGM device. Is that a fair assumption, or is there data that challenges that?
I think it's more than a fair assumption. I mean, we have data to show that people not on insulin benefit from CGM. People not treated at all with insulin benefit. So I think we need to be careful, because I agree with my colleagues. Education is a very important part of it, educating healthcare professionals as well as patients. So we need to spread it beyond just insulin users. but be very careful in our approach that we have the infrastructure to do it as well.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you for your questions. I've got to say, obviously, thank you to Professor Sidhu, Professor Kulze, Professor Rivellin, Professor Ajan, Dr. Elliott, Professor Sufert, and Professor Dataria. Thank you for being here.